What's up, everybody? It's Blake Chancey. Vancouver's real estate market has shifted, and I don't mean a temporary blip. I mean a real structural shift in how this market operates. Sales are weak and inventory is near record highs, and the balance of power has moved clearly toward buyers. But here's the thing. The Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver actually came out with some optimism this month. There's fewer new listings and some activities coming back into the detached housing market. So which is it? Is the market getting better or is it still struggling? Today, we're going to be looking at the actual data to paint a full picture, not just looking at the headline numbers. I'm talking about graphics from the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, giving you a full breakdown by property type and a look at where prices are sitting right now. And most importantly, what this all means for you as a buyer or seller in Greater Vancouver right now. Let's get into it. The headline number for March 2026 is 2,032 sales. That's around 3% below March 2025 and about 32% below the 10-year seasonal average. Now, those numbers sound pretty rough in isolation, but context matters a lot here. So let's get into the graphs. First, total sales going back 10 years, every March since 2016. March 2026 is among the slowest on record in the past decade. The only March slower than this one over the last decade was 2019. And if you remember that year, this is when mortgage stress tests came into effect and really put the brakes on the market hard. The busiest year in the last 10, March 2021. We had around 5,700 sales that month. That was a completely different world. So looking at the trend from 2023 to 2026, the direction is clearly down. That's not a mystery. We got rates, tariffs, uncertainty, all in those numbers, and we're seeing it in real time here. So most of the optimism that we're seeing right now is because of the shortage of new listings coming onto the market in 2026. They came in lower than March 2025. So that's meaningful. We still have a lot of inventory sitting on the market, but the flow of new supply is starting to ease off a little bit. When you compare it to the busiest years, 2016, 2021, 2022, and 2025, we're still on the higher end, but the trend is moving towards the right direction. Total inventory is still climbing though. Even though fewer new listings, the overall stock of homes sitting on the market hit a 10-year March high. The closest we've ever come to this level was last March. And since then, inventory has only grown. The overhang from previous months is still there and it doesn't disappear overnight. When you look at sales versus inventory side by side, the picture becomes really clear. Think back to 2019. Sales crashed, inventory spiked. Those two lines moved apart dramatically. We saw the same pattern kick in 2024 and 2025, though to a slightly smaller degree. And from 2025 to 2026, the gap between those lines is barely widening. The market is flattening, not collapsing further, it's just flat. Because of the listing to sales ratio, months of inventory right now sits around 7. So for context, 2019 was actually slightly worse, and 2025 was in a similar range. So the positive takeaway here is that March 2026 is not the worst month this market has seen in the last decade, but it's clearly not great either. Now, prices. This is the part that affects every buyer and seller watching this. When the market slowed down in 2018 to 2019, prices dropped noticeably. Same thing from 2022 to 2023. What's surprising though is between 2023 and 2025, detached home prices actually went up. But over the last 12 months, they've calmed down pretty significantly. Townhomes are telling a similar story. You can see the market cycles clearly when you look at the price graph. Up, down. Prices react to conditions. Condos are the most surprising story in the entire update. The condo price graph has basically flatlined and is now sitting close to 2018 levels, pre-COVID price levels. If you've been waiting to buy a condo in Vancouver, this is the data point that you need to sit with. We are essentially back to where we were before all of the pandemic era price run up. Now let's compare 2025 to 2026 on a month-to-month basis, because this tells a bit of a different story. What you can see is that 2025 was the stronger year early on. Pre-tariffs, there was a real optimism in the market. January 2025 was a relatively busy month. Then tariffs hit mid to late February and we had an election, and 2025 slowed down dramatically. 2026 has been chugging along at a steadier pace. Yes, we have the situation in Iran, adding some uncertainty, but compared to the tariff shock of 2025, 2026 is more of a slow grind than a sudden drop. The hope is that these two lines eventually cross and 2026 starts pulling ahead, but time will tell. New listings comparison tells a clean story too. Pretty much every month in 2026 has seen fewer sales than 2025. In March 2026, these levels are actually diverging, meaning the gap is growing. That's a positive signal for anyone currently listed. Less competition hitting the market is a good thing for you. Now let's break it down by property type because the overall numbers hide some very different stories. Detached houses in March 2026, detached sales actually outpaced March 2025. That's one of the key data points that the real estate board flagged. Compared to the last 10 years, March 2026 was the third slowest month for detached sales, behind only 2019 and 2025. But here's my read on why. Detached prices have come down a lot. And now more buyers who were priced out before are starting to come back to the table. That's a positive sign for detached sellers. But it also tells you something about where prices need to be for demand to actually show up. Townhomes are holding their own. The sales graph for townhomes is relatively flat compared to the other property types, slower than most years we've seen, except for March 2019, but this segment is more resilient. Townhomes attract end users, people buying to live in the home. They're not investors, because those investors have completely gone. So when investor demand drops, townhomes feel it less. So that market has resilience for real, and I expect it to continue. Condos are absolutely the weakest segment right now. March 2026 is the slowest March for condo sales in the last decade, behind only 2019. And the sales trend since 2021 is going down at a pretty aggressive rate. The core issue here is investor demand. Investors have largely stepped back from the market. Until conditions shift and investors start returning, I don't expect condo sales to recover in a meaningful way. So what's the upside? Prices are back to basically 2018 levels. If you're buying to live there long term, the entry point is way better than it's been in almost a decade. So where does this all leave us? Here's my take on it. The market is not a free fall, but it's not recovering quickly either. It's flattening out. Inventory is high, but the flow of new supply is easing. Sales are weak, but slightly better in certain segments like the detached housing market. Now, of course, prices are down from their peak, and in some cases, condos especially. They're back to where they were before the pandemic entirely. For buyers, this is the time to be patient. You have negotiation power, you get to put all your subjects in there, and you have time to be selective. But if you're looking at detached, or if you're looking at condos with a long-term horizon, the data suggests that the entry point right now is more favorable than it's been in years. For sellers, you have to be priced correctly. The buyers who are active right now are very informed. They know what comparable sales look like. They know how inventory is high. Overpriced listings are sitting on the market longer than ever. Properly priced properties are still moving. So that's it. That's the update for April 2026. If you found this useful, please hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I update this every month, and the market is moving fast enough right now that you don't want to miss this info. If you're in Greater Vancouver and you're looking for guidance on buying or selling, my contact info is going to be below. There's a link where you can book a call for me. I'd love to help. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.